Thank you all for joining us today. We are excited to kick off this discussion with Dr. Park. As I was kind of thinking about the learning year and the variety of topics that we could potentially incorporate, this was one of those topics that came up in more than one of the forum interviews that I held with each forum before starting my year, when I was trying to understand what each forum wanted to learn about this year and how we wanted to kind of incorporate a variety of topics into the learning year calendar. And Michael and I have been working on this for a couple of months with Dr. Park, and we're excited to have copies of her book that we had sent out. Before I kick it over to Michael, just a couple quick announcements so that you're all aware. We've got a number of exciting events coming up. Certainly the Thanksgiving Day event. We have the Dine Around. There's a women's event next week. We have the year-end event. There will be a change to the chapter retreat, just so everybody's aware. There was an overwhelming response that was not comfortable going to Costa Rica in light of all of the COVID-related activity. So we will be coming out in the next couple of weeks with our plan B. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to RSVP to the event. Without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Michael, who's going to introduce Dr. Park. Very excited to have Dr. Park here with us today.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Dr. Park, for joining us. Yuhyun, I've had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Park over the past couple of months, just kind of leading up to this event, and it's been fun. She recently published a book called IQ, EQ, DQ. Everybody should be receiving it. Highly recommend reading it. It's a great book. I'm lucky enough to day chair this event and one other event coming up with Steve Kotler, and I was telling Dr. Park earlier that in the book, The Art of Impossible, he references that if you read the proper book, 5 hours with the book will get you 15 years of his life and research. And clearly, this book is that quality, right? There's a lot of research. Dr. Park is a fascinating person and, has a lot of amazing experience. So just a quick introduction. Who Dr. Park is. Dr. Park developed the Online Safety Index, which is the world's first real-time metric tracker to help nations better understand their children's online safety status, and leads DQ Every Child initiative, which is a global digital citizenship movement that has empowered children's families and teachers in more than 80 countries to date. Again, fascinating book. Great, well done, Yuhyun. I'm excited to be part of this. Thank you for joining us. I'll hand it over to you right now.
Chris, thank you for the introduction. I'm Yuhyun Park, founder of DQ Institute. Thank you for having me today to share about my book, IQ, EQ, DQ. Have you heard about DQ? I believe many of you in the US, DQ means the Dairy Queens. And my mother first thought that DQ is a drama queen, but hopefully from today, you remember DQ means the digital intelligence. Just like IQ stands for the intelligence and EQ stands for the emotional intelligence. I wrote this book to take you to my last 10 years journey of social impact movement that just Michael shared. And more importantly, that was a journey to set the DQ as the global standard for digital literacy, digital skills, and digital readiness. I wrote this book to share with you not much about the intellectual discussion, more about I wanted to share my story that I learned throughout the journey, the amazing people that I met, and the insight that I learned. So what I wanted to achieve through this book was that I want you to take you to work with me, actually. So at the end of the day, at the end of this talk, I want you to tell me if you're interested into part of this journey as well. So Next 30 minutes, I'd like to talk about three things. Why we need a global standard, and what is the most important digital skills that the world currently need. And I think these two topics will summarize my last 10 years and about the books. And lastly, I want to talk about what about next. So what about next 10 years? So let's dive in. Exactly 1 year ago, 24 September 2020, the DQ became the global standard for digital literacy, digital skills, and digital readiness by the IEEE Standard Associations. And this institutionalizations actually started in 2017. One day I got a call from the IEEE, and they told me that they want to create the DQ as an industry standard for digital skills. And I was quite surprised because I developed it for children. And they told me that they looked at more than 100 literatures and frameworks, and they think DQ is the best. So I said, why not? But I thought that it is not just enough for IEEE to take the lead. So I called OECD, who's owned the PISA. So I wanted to have the discussion, not just about the tech sectors, but also across the sectors between the technology and educations. So World Economic Forum joined as a convening platform, and we decided to use a DQ framework as a common language and global standard to coordinate digital skills movement around the world. So that was a start. So 1 year later, announcement was made on, it was 26 September 2018. It was one of a day in UNGA week in New York City. Can you find me over there? I was young and beautiful back then, wearing a red in the middle, together with the Gabriela Ramos from the OECD and Karen McKay from IEEE and Eric White from WEF. We announced the launch of the Coalition for Digital Intelligence. I actually cherish this moment. I wrote about this moment at the in the first chapter of the book. Not because it was a fancy stage, actually it was a fancy stage, but more because it was kind of moment that you feel like you see the clouds from a far distance, and when you're really, really waiting for rain, you know how it feels like. So I felt like, okay, something is coming. So you will understand what I'm saying, you know, because it was all started 10 years ago, actually with this one image. In 2008, I remember an 8-year-old girl who was raped by the child porn addict in Korea on 8 a.m. on her way to school. It was a horrible incident. This image was drawn by the victim girls, wishing the offenders to get the maximum punishment. Back then, I was pregnant with my second baby, and I was working at the Boston Consulting Group in San Francisco. That incident actually made every parent upset in Korea, and I was not exception. So at the time, I was actually reading everything about her story on a major news portals in Korea. And I saw this image, and right below this news and this image, I saw another image. This image was a porn advertisement entitled "A Pure 16-year-old Girl Inviting You to Her Bed," so with a naked young girl's image. So when I saw these two images side by side, that was a moment I realized that there is something terribly wrong in our digital ecosystem. And I felt that it was not just about one girl in Korea or one offenders in Korea. I felt any children can fall into this risk. And that means we are all involved. And that means we are all responsible. So that was a starting point of my social impact journey. I felt I need to do something as a parent. So that was a starting point. And I think I was not wrong about this risk. And I want to share this new report that I developed in 2018.
The internet, smartphones, and social media, the impact they have on children is never far from the thoughts of parents and teachers. But are we really facing what some experts call a cyber pandemic? Well, a new report believes we are. It found that over half of 8 to 12-year-olds are exposed to cyber risks, such as cyberbullying, fake news, and online sexual abuse. The number of those at risk rises in countries undergoing rapid digital transformation. 71% in Egypt, the same percentage in Indonesia and in the Philippines. The figure is 73%. And by 2020, it's estimated that over 725 million children aged from 8 to 12 will be online, and more than 90% of these will be from those countries experiencing that rapid rate of digital penetration. And those countries are where cyber risks are greatest.
This is actually news articles in 2021, but back then in 2010, at the time, actually there were not many discussions about the cyber risk in children. So when I started my social impact journey, I was completely treated as a weirdo, or to some people, it was a complete loser thing. 10 years ago, whenever I was asked by the people, what are you trying to achieve? Because people didn't understand what I tried to do at that time in Korea. So I said to people that within 10 years, I will make the global standard for digital empowerment and safety for children. I don't know what that could be, but so I wanted to say, so every nation and every industry have to pay attention to this matter. Was it because I was visionary or aspirational? No, actually, I said it out of the frustrations because at the time, nobody cared about it. And surprisingly, 10 years later, DQ became really standard. And I was the one who was most surprised at the fact. So how can I not write about this book? Anyway, if you look at these articles, these are very interesting. This from the Wall Street journals, talking about the harmful effect of social media, like Facebook and TikToks on children's and youth. And also they're talking about the China gaming ban. I found this is extremely interesting to see how people describe Facebook and social media industry with tobacco business. Because that was exactly what I tried to do 10 years ago. I commissioned this research to KAIST, which is MIT equivalent in Korea, to come up with the economic cost-benefit analysis because of the addictive gaming industry. What I tried to say from this analysis is that actually gaming industry is not very different from the tobacco business, and actually it is harmful for the society as a whole. And this article was published at the peer-reviewed journal. In a nutshell, our research shows that total economic benefit in Korea generated by the gaming industry was estimated about 24 billion at the time of 2010. And if you look at the cost, social costs generated by this addiction was estimated 3.5 billion, where the actual sales of this company were in total about 6.6 billion. So you can see that more than half of them was generated to and converted to the social costs. So this analysis showed gaming company earned 6.6, society as a whole about 18 million, 17 million, but 3.5 of social costs was burdened by individuals and society. So isn't it interesting? And do I think when I see the Wall Street Journal, was I correct 10 years ago, comparing digital media company with tobacco business? Do I think it is correct? And do I agree with this parallel argument in the US today? Long story short, after 10 years, my answer is no. And I was wrong back then. Why? Because I think there are some more fundamental and systematic issues. There's a huge speed gap between the technology and human response. Technology grows in exponential speed, where human response is rather linear. Human response means the education policy and its infrastructures. So this speed gap is bound to generate intended or unintended negative consequences. More important thing is that we are actually passing or already past a tipping point that we may not be able to stop or control all these intended or unintended consequences. So I thought that it is really critical for us to shift the paradigm and change the narrative to overcome the speed gap. So at the time, I was thinking, what is a new intelligence for individuals? What is a superpower that we want to give to our children in order to thrive in this digital age? So that was the time I named it DQ. Just like IQ emerged after first and second industrial revolution, EQ was born with the third industrial revolution. Now we say we're in the fourth, I don't know, maybe fifth industrial revolution. And I wanted to say we need digital intelligence. Then what is digital intelligence? Now with the AI and all this, if you go to any education and skilling talk, you will hear this question very often. What are the skills needed for the humans to compete against AI? And I really hate that question. But anyway, if IQ is about being smart, it's already proven that AI run over a human, right? And if EQ is about being kind, also there are many research shown that AI can be quite empathetic and kind. And what is left to us? And I always use this analogy. So horse is faster than us, but we don't compete against horse. We ride horse. So likewise, I believe it is so important for us to teach our children how to ride technology. What does it mean? I think we all agree the current digital ecosystem, and especially internet, is overloaded with the unfiltered, uncensored informations. If they're uncensored and unfiltered, we need to filter our inside. That means we need a critical thinking. We need a moral compass. It can be called the discernment. It can be called wisdom. So if you ask me what is the one word to describe DQ, I would say it is being wise. Being wise in this overly complex world that we are living. So I designed that DQ to cover all area of our life, digital life. So we look at the 8 digital area, from digital identity, digital use, digital safety, security, emotional intelligence, communication, literacy, and right. So I wanted to look at how EQ can be a comprehensive setup. You know, it has a very long description. Technical, cognitive, metacognitive, socio-emotional. It's quite academic, but basically every possible capability that enable individuals to face challenges and demands of digital life. So you remember we have 8 areas. But at the same time, we need to have a maturity model. So we made it very simple. You know how to live online, which is digital citizenship. When you know how to live online, you need to know how to create. When you know how to create, you need to convert that into the value. It can be impact, it can be economic values. So we called it digital competitiveness. But most importantly, we believe it is important to be rooted with universal moral value. that made us human to be humane. So as I shared in the beginning, it became the global standard through the IEEE and endorsed by the OECD and World Economic Forum and other many organizations. So what does it mean by the global standard? So last several years, we worked intensely with IEEE and many organizations to find a common language. We look at most major digital skills frameworks around the world, and we create the common taxonomy and knowledges. So this global standard can serve as common language that can connect the different frameworks around the world. But more importantly, it will be basis to become individuals to become future ready, and that person can create their well-being, individual well-being and societal well-being, and UN SDG goal should be achieved through that competency. And so when I actually talk about the standard, after 2018, many asked me, are you going to conquer the world? But to me, when I started to thinking about the global standard, was not about the championing the world. It is about the drawing the line. So it is an interesting episode. I spoke with the founder of Kakao, one of the richest man and most successful tech giant in Korea. And when I conceptualized DQ and I talked about the standard, and he told me that he doesn't believe in this standard. He told me, that's why he agreed that his daughter decided to drop out of college. So I told him, we don't develop the standard for people like you or your daughter. You're way above the standard. Probably same logic applied to all of you. The standard exists for the most unprivileged children. It is drawing the line, not even the middle line. We are drawing the bottom line. So we want to ensure that not a single child, not a single individual falls below that line. Our aspiration is that that line will level playing field. And our vision for this global standard will enable, for instance, a girl in Afghanistan will have the same opportunity to thrive that a rich girl in the US now can have. But this is the reality, actually not really. Our research published in February 2020, right before the COVID-19 take over the world, we found that 60% of children aged 8 to 12 have experienced at least one cyber risk, including cyberbullying, gaming disorder, social media disorder, risky content and content, as well as cyber threats, misinformation, fake news, and more. If you think about the 60%, and if you think about this age group, this is really high number. And I see this the very common, similar percentage all around the world. So I call this cyber pandemic. And it was not very welcoming word after COVID-19 happened. But actually, how can I describe anything else? So if somebody asks me, what is most important digital skills within the DQ? Some may say, codings and all computational thinking, robotics. Yes, they're important. But to me, without hesitation, I will tell that it's a first level of digital citizenship, which is the capacity to enable people to think critically so that they can make a decision to minimize the risk, all those risks that we talked about, and then maximize their potential in this digitized world. So I call this digital citizenship as digital DNA, because I believe that these skills can help ourself and physical self into a digital citizen with digital DNA. So people can live responsibly, safely, and confidently, successfully in both online and offline. And I believe that you will, once someone have the digital citizenship, the rest skill can naturally follow with learning and agency. Details of the digital citizenship can be found in the book. And I believe it is not just about the children. It applies workforce, seniors, general publics. And I believe it gives the mindset and aptitude to thrive in this digital age. So with that belief, we ran DQ Every Child together with the World Economic Forum and about 100 organizations together. The whole mission is to empower children, especially age 8 to 12 years old, with digital citizenship. So any child, any family, any schools in any country can learn freely the digital citizenship. And I want to share this video.
Protect yourself from cyberbullying.
Yo lo primero que hice fue bloquearlo y poner mi perfil privado.
인터넷에서 하는 말 다 믿지 않아요. Empathy, like how to must care about others. To use computers safely.
Stop here. But last year we closed the DQ Every Child by 2020. And Child Online Safety Index we published as a wrap-up of DQ Every Child. This is actually first index that measured the national level child online safety holistically. What was meaningful at the time is that we look at this issue. A lot of time when we talk about child online safety, we look at the child and say, hey, you're a bad kid. Parents, and you didn't pay attention, you're not a role model. But actually it is not about the individual, it is actually ecosystem building. So we try to look at this issue beyond individuals or families or organizations. So we look at children's online behavior, about their risky behavior and their usage behavior, but at the same time, do they have the digital citizenship competency? And parents provide digital parenting, and school have a right online safety policy or digital citizenship education for their students. Government and industry, do they have the right safety by design or empowerment measures? But at the same time, do they have connectivity? So we look at the whole holistically about this issue. And we look at about 30 countries, and this is a result in the United States. And if you look at it, we can see that US is leading. Definitely the legal frameworks, industry engagement, and cybersecurity infrastructure, but you guys are not very good at parental guidance. And you guys are not very good at the cyber risk either. So what we try to achieve through the Child Online Safety Index is that we want the peoples to understand where they can find the resources more effectively at national level. And I suggested also last year to G20 digital economy that coaches should be included in the G20 measurement for digital economy. Because currently major indices around the world relate to digital, they don't talk about human. They mostly talk about the hard infrastructure. They talk about job readiness, but they don't talk about the resilience well-being. So I strongly believe digital economy has to be about the human. And currently there is a seriously lack of attention on the human side of digital transformations, especially on the children. So that was on my last chapter of the book. And it didn't take 5 hours. It takes about 20 minutes to learn about my book. But my conclusion, closing 10 years of DQ Every Child social impact journey, was that we as a global community may be in a sinking ship. So this is image that I always remind myself. It's also happened in Korea in 2014. This is ferry sunk in Korean Sea. And there was a 300 high school students were on the board. And they all, most of them, almost 90% of them couldn't rescue. It was one of the real tragic incidents. And the previous president was impeached because of their lack of response on this incident. And experts look at it and what was a really failure point. And they all say, we lost the golden time of rescue. So they calculated how many minutes they could afford after the ship had a problem. So they say they should escape the ship within 110 minutes. It was less than 2 hours. So if you think about it, it seems like very short time. But they ran the simulation. And if everybody coordinated and worked together, it could have taken just 5 minutes to make every student to escape from the sinking ferries. And I want to ask ourselves, we talk about the education crisis, we talk about cyber risk pandemic, we talk about so many problems that we are facing in the digital space. And are we losing our golden time? I think this is a very important question that we have to address together. So that is my vision for next 10 years. I want to actually share with you and also challenge you. What do you think? How can we work together and we make utilization of our golden time? So we plan to launch actually next year. You guys have a preview, DQ for All. So before it was DQ Every Child. And this time around, what we try to achieve through the DQ Institute is that we want to do the rapid coordination of digital skills initiative so that no one is left behind. So who is for all? So we started with the children, but with the standard, we are bringing this initiative to everyone, every corner of our society, to SME workers, educators, working professional as well, and girls and women and senior. What we are aspire to do is to connect digital skills programs around the world. So we empower those who empower. What does it mean? You might know that one of the UN SDG goal is to close the digital skills by 2030. But with the COVID, digitization is going crazy. And it is really critical for us to do the closing gap, especially digital skills gap. Can we make it even within 5 hours? I strongly believe the magic number is 1 billion citizens. And we want to coordinate our effort to empower 1 billion citizens as fast as possible. So why 1 billion? With the theory of change, the new innovation get adopted by 15% of population, then it becomes a norm naturally to the whole population. So if you look at our the Earth's population, I think magic number is 1 billion to realize the DQ for all. Currently, there are many digital skills movement education programs around the world, and I believe the billions of dollars invested by private and public sectors. But how come we are seeing this cyber pandemic and ever increasing digital skills gap? The problem that we have is that most of the program owners work in silo. I was also leading the global movement, but we are working silo. We don't talk to each other. We are reinventing the wheels, causing inefficiency. And we use all different languages and frameworks with different understanding. The problem creates that it really difficult to keep track of the national, regional, and collective, global collective process. And it made us difficult to identify what are the true impact, and at the same time, what are the true gaps. You're quite blinded at this moment. That actually lead us to inefficient resource management and distributions currently in education space. So our suggestion is simple. We are not telling the world that you have to use a DQ standard. No. And nobody should be forced to use any standard, especially in education world. Every country and every company should use their own frameworks based on their digital transformation agenda. So let's say you have a digital skills program with your own frameworks. That's great, but you can be fantastic. So what we do is that we can help you to connect with the best programs using DQ standard as a Swift code in the banking, right? Swift code connected Singapore to US, just like that. This is an example that we work with the World Bank to support nations to develop and enhance their digital skills roadmap and frameworks by connecting the best practice around the world using the DQ as a common language. And the second, we are becoming like an Intel Inside. Your computer has an Intel Inside. It doesn't have to be the Intel. It can be Samsung. It can be not Apple, right? Other computer. So DQ can help you to create the digital skills program fast and in a low cost. So this is an example with the Lego, which was released just 2 weeks ago. They released this whole suite of digital citizenship education for kids as well as the parents. I'll be happy to share the more resources. It's fantastic. And we are inside, powered by DQ. They developed their content based on the DQ frameworks and our education program that you saw in the DQ world. And we supported them to develop the high quality education content fast and efficiently. And we'd love to do it to actually the programs in Africa, programs in Latin America, programs in the Middle East. So that's our strategy to connect the different initiatives around the world. And we have one of the largest data set related to digital skills. So we developed the common measurement. We call it DQ score, but what we are trying to do is embed it in any digital skills program. So currently we Accenture and AMF program in Australia and Saudi Arabia, they are whole different programs, but they carry the DQ assessment tools. What we are doing is that we are helping them to do the objective impact measure. At the same time, we are creating the global data bank that enable to create the global repository of all DQ related data based on standardized metrics. It enables us to develop a collective impact measure. It will help nations and organizations to understand their true impact, but at the same time, they understand about what are the gaps are there. So what we try to achieve is that we are trying to help global coordinations and help achieve the DQ for all mandate. So I want to quickly close my talk with the invitations. I always remember that we only have 110 minutes. And if we work together, it may only take us 5 minutes. So I want you to consider to be part of this new journey of DQ for all. And I hope that the next DQ book can be written by you. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuhyun. Great job. Really fascinating. And I encourage everybody to really spend some time with the book. You know, really great examples and amazing stuff. Couple of questions. So please, if you have questions, post them in the chat, if you could. But a couple questions for you. You know, when we first met, we were talking about Brittany Kaiser and her relationship with Cambridge Analytica. You know, it seems like it's a losing battle, right? You know, if these big organizations don't adopt this universal moral value that you speak of, you know, the mind is hackable, right? If we're exposing children to very subtle cues that we know can hack the mind, you know, and you referenced the tics that these girls have, and you know, cyberbullying, is it a winnable battle, right? Do we have a chance, you know, as much as we empower our children and educate them, if the influences on them are so powerful, like what we saw on Cambridge Analytica and the Great Hack movie, how can we win?
Michael, you're the expert. Please share your wisdom on this. What do you think? I want to hear your opinion first.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, my opinion is two-pronged. We've talked about this. I think you have to have both, right? And I think we have to, the problem is that we also referenced this before, is that our leaders, our political leaders, don't have the education. They don't have the DQ to govern these big companies, right? So yes, you still have to have that sit down with your kids, just like the birds and the bees conversation. You need to constantly update with the DQ challenges. But again, if we don't make some drastic changes in how we govern some of these organizations, I think it's a losing battle. You know, and my very commonsensical approach, and I know you may disagree with me, is eliminate the anonymity on the internet, right? If we create a platform where there is a lack of anonymity, where we know that my counterpart is a verified person, right? I feel that that's going to have a great impact. And look, there should be a place for, if you want to be anonymous, you can, and we can all have the choice to be anonymous or not anonymous. But I think I want to be in a more safer context and say, hey, I'm a verified person, right? We're looking at the stuff on LinkedIn now, and you know, the AI is amazing, how they could fake and spoof people. So curious your input there, Yuhyun.
Sure. Actually, I had a luxury to try everything that I can do related to online safety. I work with several government on the, well, also I share with you, making an act on the safety part at the same time, anonymity also issue that we try to tackle. And I've been involving with the Cinderella law, which is similar to the China gaming ban, which I didn't agree with. The issue is that, as I shared with you, is the speed gap is ever increasing. And child safety, like for instance, screen time. Before we turn off the computer, people, like, there was a lot of parents who were just tell the kids that shut the computer down and take away the mobiles, and now it's not working. We have IoT, you know, everywhere, and now metaverse is coming, right? So if you're asking me about is it the winning game, I don't know. But what I wrote in the book is that what is important is that we sometimes fear more about the technology advance, how fast they are, and how they can be evil. But my more concern is that, are we losing the thinking capability? It's not like a machine becomes a super intelligence in evil. More important thing is that, are we losing our values? Are we losing our humanness? And are we losing the capacity to think? I think that is a more important question that we have to ask ourselves. There was a full chapters talking about how this gamifications and a lot of techniques and social media is actually affecting children's the thinking skills as well as the mental health. And my concern is more about are we educating better? How can we empower them to be the better thinker? And we are losing the ground when you're asking that question. Related to the digital surveillance issue, as well as the algorithm issue and all others, it is something that we have to pull the trigger in the other side as well. It is not just about the education. It is about the ethical dimensions of the technology. But we also ran the the research on whether there's a regulation is even possible. So I made a lot of mistakes, and I made a lot of assumptions that regulation somehow may work. So I supported some government to, I'm not very proud of it, to run some regulation in some aspect. But my conclusion is that this fast emerging technology and industry regulation, self-regulation is very difficult to expect. And one way of government strong regulation is always slow, and it's like a catching the light. They always come in after, and they're already gone this far. So co-regulation, is it even possible? So there's a lot of questions that we have to ask. That's why we need to work together. And we need to have a smartest per people in the group and talk about how we can tackle this problem together. It is not about the one company issue. It's not about the one politician issue, from my observation. Yeah.
Can you just explain the China ban? What your visibility on it? What drove that? And what do they know that we don't know? What are they seeing? Because we know they have much more visibility in China as to what everybody's doing. What data drove that decision?
I'm not Chinese. I don't work for
I know,
the Chinese government.
Yeah.
No. I'm setting my answer to be somewhere to escape. I cannot speak for there, but there's already, mostly from the U.S., a vast amount of research how the gaming disorder. People call it gaming addiction, but the WHO uses a gaming disorder, excessive use of gaming, pathological use of gaming, how it affects individuals, children's wellness, health, and overall development. It's huge. There's just vast of informations are there. So I think there's a lot of dimensions that government try to tackle. So starting with teenager rights to sleep, teenager rights to mental health. There's a lot of ways that it can be tackled. I know that Australia, they started the Online Safety Act, and I believe the US also tried to set it up, and UK is having the also serious dimension to put the legislations to get more regulation on social media and gaming. Is it right things to do? I don't have an answer for that. In Korea, we had a very similar initiative 10 years ago also. We called the Cinderella Law. Basically, at 12 a.m., under 16 years old cannot access to the online. And what happened is that all of a sudden, the middle-aged women became the heaviest user of the online game because they're using their parents' or mother's ID to get into the gaming. So, and that law was abolished I think last year, because it didn't work. China, probably they do it more in sophisticated way. They do the facial recognitions, and they have all kinds of other measures to put on top of what we have done in Korea. I understand where the motivation comes, but I don't think it's going to ever happen in other countries. I'm not seeing that it's ever happening in the US.
Any other questions?
I had one. Dr. Park, really appreciate your comments today. One of the slides you brought up talked about kind of where the US ranks in, I think it was parental guidance to children, and certainly the number could afford to be a whole lot higher. What are your kind of recommendations to, this group? Certainly, most of us are parents, me being one of them. What should I be doing to educate my children now and continuously about, having a higher digital quotient?
I think, parental guidance, the culture also dictates, right? Asian cultures and US culture certainly different. That's why you call the Asian mom as a tiger moms, right? So there's definitely difference in the culture when it comes to the parenting. But digital parenting is not about the monitoring and restriction. It's more about helping. The key of digital parenting is helping children to become an independent thinker, like helping them to be the ethical digital citizens who can have their own self-regulations to make decisions. So with that in mind, it is important to start very early. Like best time to be the good parents is that when your kid's in the tummy, right? And there can be another whole sessions talking about the digital parenting in principle, but depending on your age group, there's a way that you want to engage with your children or your teenagers. Most important thing I usually say, because we don't have much time, there is a research shows that the parental monitoring and filtering, that can be done when your child is 5 or 6 years old, right? But when they become even 10, probably they know better than you how to escape all those loopholes. So it is very important to build the trust between you and your children. So you see that the statistics, right? So at some point, our children will confront the cyber risk, and you should be the one they come to you. And there's a numerous study showing that when it comes to digital issue, they don't come to parents. They come to online friends, they come to other exit. That makes problem even more problematic. So it is important to build a trust. That means that you may stop monitoring. It's actually the trust is more powerful, and your tie and their belief that they're not going to you're not going to yell at them and shut it down when they talk about the whatever incidents in the online. So I think that is just not so. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, just on that, just as we close on the digital parenting, I think that's exactly right. I agree with that. I'm in the technology world. I think trying to have full visibility of what's happening is almost impossible. There's no technology that I've seen that's completely effective and trusting. But Dr. Park, from an interaction, I mean, are there any signs that we should look for as parents, especially of younger children, that they might be distressed, besides the usual, just kind of knowing your child? Anything else that you've seen that might come up besides normal parenting, that we know that's instinctual that we should keep an eye out for?
Keeping an eye out for is, and it's applied to every parenting about, whatever symptoms that you find it weird. But most important thing, I really think that, parents don't have to fear to talk about digital. A lot of parents think that their kids are better than them related to technology. So they give out the power. Oh, you know better than me. But actually digital parenting is not about the technology. It is about your parenting. And it is about putting your family value on your children. So what is happening is that if you are not occupying the heart of our children, and someone else will occupy very easily. So, digital parenting is really about you being parents. Take back your power as a parent, and don't be afraid to talk about this. And you have to have the regular rapport talk about this. You have to understand what they do and who they're talking with, and that is just 101, right? You need to have the boundary of the family rules online, and when, what to use online, and you have to have grip. You do that with offline, right? So just like that, you do it in online. Yes. I know it's a 10 p.m. here. It's a 1 hour clock has met.
That's well said. I think that's a great way to close. Thank you, Yuhyun. Thank you, Dr. Park. Thanks, Chris, for coordinating. Really appreciate the presentation and your time. If anyone has any questions afterwards, please funnel them through Marguerite. We'll get them to Dr. Park, and look forward to seeing you again soon, Yuhyun.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Dr. Park. Thanks, Michael.
Okay.
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.